There is something strange about how normal the Truman Show feels now. Not the big twist. Not the giant dome. Not even the hidden cameras. Those things are still dramatic, still cinematic, still larger than life. But the everyday texture of Truman's world, the part that used to feel like pure satire, has started to feel uncomfortably familiar. A man wakes up in a bright little town. He smiles at the neighbors. He says the line everyone knows. He goes to work, follows the same streets, passes the same friendly faces, and lives inside a world that seems designed to keep him calm. Nothing about Sea Haven looks like a prison at first. It looks like safety. It looks like success. It looks like a place where everything has been arranged so life can stay polite, cheerful, and predictable. That may be why the movie still hits so hard for an American audience. Truman is not trapped in a dark cell. He is trapped inside a version of the good lie. The town is clean. The job is stable. The marriage looks respectable. The neighbors are warm. The products are always ready. The sky is bright. The routine is smooth. From the outside, it almost looks like the dream worked. And then the camera angle reminds us what this dream really is. The scary part is not simply that Truman is being filmed. The scary part is that his life has been shaped so completely around being filmed that everyone else has learned to call it normal. The people around him are not just watching him. They are guiding him, selling through him, managing his fears, writing his relationships, turning his most private moments into something that can be packaged, sponsored, and watched from a couch. Back in 1998, that already made the film sharp. But watching it now, after decades of reality TV, social media, live streaming, personal brands, influencer sponsorships, targeted ads, and phones that turn ordinary life into public material, the movie feels less like a strange prediction and more like a question we still have not answered. What does it mean to live freely when being seen can also become a business model? That is the angle that makes The Truman Show worth revisiting for Kokwaki. Not because we are literally Truman. Most people are not trapped inside a physical dome with actors pretending to be their family. That comparison would be too easy, and honestly, too flat. The more interesting thing is softer than that. The movie understands how control often arrives disguised as comfort. It understands that performance does not always feel fake while you are doing it. It understands that a world can smile at you while quietly deciding where you are allowed to go. And it understands something very American about visibility. Being watched can feel like success, protection, validation, opportunity, and invasion, all at the same time. Truman's tragedy is not only that strangers see him. It is that he has never been allowed to decide what should remain his. His childhood, his grief, his marriage, his fear, his routines, even his desire to leave. All of it belongs to a show before it belongs to him. That is why the cameras feel familiar. They are not just pieces of equipment hidden in Sea Haven. They are the shape of a world where attention has value, where privacy is negotiable, and where a person can be turned into content before he even knows he is performing. Sea Haven is one of the smartest things about The Truman Show because it does not look like danger. It looks like a postcard. The streets are clean. The houses are soft and bright. Everyone seems to know their role. The colors feel sunny without feeling wild. The whole place has that carefully polished feeling of an advertisement for a neighborhood, a lifestyle. Maybe even a version of America where nothing is messy enough to disturb the morning routine. That matters because Sea Haven is not just a set. It is a product. The movie keeps showing us that Truman's world is built to be comforting, but also built to be soul. His home is not only his home. It is a showroom. His marriage is not only a marriage. It is a platform for product placement. His friendships are not only friendships. They are pieces of programming. Even the town itself feels like a brand promise. Live here, smile here, stay here, and everything will make sense. For a US audience, this is where the film's suburban dream reading becomes so strong. See Heaven resembles an exaggerated version of the perfect American town. Safe streets, good manners, predictable neighbors, stable work, and a surface-level happiness that looks great from a distance. The darker joke is that the dream only works because every exit has been quietly blocked. That is what makes See Heaven so creepy. It controls Truman through comfort before it controls him through force. When Truman wants to leave, the world does not immediately turn into a horror movie. At first it becomes inconvenient. Traffic appears. Travel warnings appear. People discourage him. His fears are triggered. His relationships pull him back. The town does not need bars on every window because it has something better: routine, politeness, guilt, and a whole environment designed to make staying feel reasonable. That is a very different kind of prison. It is not a prison that tells you it hates you. It is a prison that tells you it loves you. It tells you the outside is risky. It tells you your life is already good. It tells you there is no reason to be difficult. It tells you to enjoy the clean streets and the friendly greetings and the dependable script. And that is where the movie's American angle becomes more than just a media critique. See Heaven is also about the performance of normalcy. Truman is expected to be cheerful, productive, settled, married, polite, and grateful. He is expected to play the role of a man whose life is working. The show depends on him looking happy enough that the audience can enjoy watching him. Modern American life does not need to be as extreme as See Heaven for that feeling to land. Social media rewards the polished version. Work culture rewards the agreeable version. Advertising rewards the aspirational version. Suburban myth-making rewards the stable version. The version of yourself that looks like it has everything together is often the easiest one for the world to understand. The film notices how exhausting that can be before Truman even understands why he is tired. That is why See Heaven feels both warm and fake. It is not simply ugly control hidden beneath pretty surfaces. It is more unsettling than that. The pretty surface is the control. The neatness, the repetition, the friendly faces, the bright storefronts, the perfect sky. All of it teaches Truman what kind of life he is supposed to want. And because that life looks so familiar, it takes him a long time to suspect that the comfort around him might also be the thing keeping him still. The most painful thing about Truman's life is not that everything is fake in a simple way. It is that some parts may feel real while still being built on a lie. That is what makes the relationships in the Truman Show so uncomfortable. If everyone around Truman were obviously evil, the movie would be easier to process. But that is not how it works. Meryl smiles like a wife. Marlon talks like a best friend. His mother uses memory and family warmth to guide him back into place. The neighbors act cheerful. The co-workers act ordinary. Everyone behaves as if the emotional world around Truman is natural. But every relationship has a second function. Meryl is not only sharing a home with him, she is also selling products through him. The way she holds up an item and suddenly talks like an advertisement is funny at first because it breaks the scene so openly. But it is also one of the film's most disturbing ideas. A private moment becomes a sales pitch. A marriage becomes part of the commercial structure. Intimacy becomes inventory. That lands differently now because American viewers live in a culture where advertising has become much more personal. It is not only a commercial break between programs. It is a sponsorship in a podcast voice. It is a product inside a lifestyle video. It is an influencer turning a morning routine into a brand deal. It is the strange feeling that someone's real kitchen, real relationship, or real vulnerability can suddenly become part of a sales funnel. The Truman Show saw that collapse early. Meryl's product placement is exaggerated, but the logic is familiar. The more intimate the setting, the more powerful the advertisement becomes. Marlon is even harder to think about because his betrayal is softer. He may genuinely care about Truman in some damaged, compromised way. That is why their scenes hurt. The friendship feels emotionally close, but it is still professionally managed. Marlon can comfort Truman while receiving lines through an earpiece. He can say something tender while serving the production. He can look like loyalty while functioning as a wall. That is one of the movie's most human questions. Does the feeling remain real if the situation that creates it is control? The answer is not simple. Truman's pain is real. His longing is real. His kindness is real. His suspicion is real. But the environment around those feelings has been arranged by people who benefit from keeping him confused. So even when an actor feels something for him, Truman has still been denied the one thing every relationship needs: the ability to know what he is consenting to. That is why Sylvia matters. She is not important only because she is the romantic alternative. She is important because she refuses the basic rule of the show. She sees Truman as a person before she sees him as a character. In a world where everyone has been trained to protect the format, she's one of the few people who understands that the format itself is the violation. For a US audience, this connects with a broader anxiety about authenticity. We live around public selves, curated lives, personal brands, sponsored intimacy, and relationships that can become content. Again, that does not mean every online relationship is fake. That would be too cynical. But the movie gives us a sharp question. When a life becomes watchable enough, who gets to decide where performance ends? Truman does not know he is performing. That is the cruelty. Everyone else knows the scene has an audience. Everyone else knows the emotional stakes are also entertainment. Everyone else knows that his marriage, friendships, family memories, and grief are useful to the show. So the theft is not just privacy. It is context. Truman has been robbed of the truth around his own emotions. He can feel everything sincerely, but he cannot understand the stage that has been built around those feelings. That is why the film is still so quietly devastating. The cameras invade his life, but the people around him invade something deeper: his ability to know what is real enough to trust. The audience inside The Truman Show may be the most uncomfortable part of the movie because they are not presented as monsters. They laugh with Truman. They worry about him. They cheer for him. They gather in bars, sit in living rooms, watch from bathtubs, follow him during work breaks, and treat his life as something familiar. For many of them, Truman is not just entertainment. He is company. That is what makes the critique sharper. The film is not saying that every viewer is cruel in an obvious way. It is asking whether affection can still be harmful when it depends on someone else's lack of freedom. The people watching Truman feel close to him. They know his habits. They know his fears. They know his marriage, his job, his voice, his routines. They have watched him grow up. In a way, they know more about him than many people in a normal life would know. But their closeness is completely one-sided. Truman does not know them. He never invited them in. He cannot step away from them because he does not know they are there. That is parasocial intimacy before the phrase became part of everyday online culture. For an American audience now, this is one of the film's strongest modern connections. Reality TV, live streaming, YouTube, TikTok, podcasts, celebrity culture, influencer families, true crime, and social feeds have all made it normal to feel emotionally connected to people we do not actually know. Sometimes that connection is harmless. Sometimes it can be meaningful. But The Truman Show asks what happens when the person being watched pays the cost of that connection without ever agreeing to it. The audience says they love Truman, but their love keeps the show valuable. Their attention gives Christoph power. Their loyalty makes the violation profitable. Their emotional investment becomes part of the cage. That is a difficult idea because the movie also implicates us gently. We are watching Truman too. We want him to discover the truth. We want him to escape. We feel better about our watching because we are on his side. But the film keeps placing us near the fictional audience, reminding us that spectatorship is not neutral just because we feel something. This matters in American media culture because private pain often becomes public content. We watch breakups, family conflicts, breakdowns, scandals, apologies, trials, confessions, and real people under pressure. Sometimes we call it concern. Sometimes we call it curiosity. Sometimes we call it accountability. Sometimes it is just entertainment with better language around it. The Truman Show does not solve that problem for us, but it makes the feeling visible. There is also something cold about the way the audience behaves at the end. Truman's escape is emotional. It feels enormous. People cheer. The story reaches its spiritual high point. And then, almost immediately, some viewers ask what else is on. That final shift is brutal because it shows how quickly a person's entire life can become yesterday's content. The audience can move on. Truman cannot. For them, the show ends. For him, reality begins. That is one reason the film feels even sharper in the streaming and scrolling era. Attention can be intense and shallow at the same time. A person can become the center of the world for a moment, then disappear into the next feed, the next clip, the next story, the next spectacle. The movie asks a question that still feels uncomfortable. When we watch someone's life, are we caring about them? Or are we consuming the feeling they give us? The answer may change depending on the situation. That is why the film avoids making the audience cartoonishly evil. Most of them probably do care about Truman in some way. They are moved by him. They root for him. They feel attached. But care without responsibility is not freedom. And affection without consent does not become harmless just because it feels warm. That is the quiet accusation inside the movie. Truman's world was built by Christoph, but it was sustained by viewers who liked having access to him. They did not need to hate him to harm him. They only needed to keep watching. Christoph is frightening because he does not talk like someone who thinks he is destroying a man. He talks like someone who thinks he is protecting him. That is the key to why he remains such a strong antagonist. If Christoph were only greedy, the movie would still work, but it would be smaller. Instead, he speaks with the calm certainty of a creator who believes he understands Truman better than Truman understands himself. He built the world. He controls the weather. He arranges relationships. He edits the fear. He manages the exits. And somehow, in his own mind, all of that becomes care. That is why his control room in the moon is such a perfect image. Christoph is above Truman's world, looking down, shaping events like a corporate god. He speaks from the sky. He commands the storm. He decides what is safe. He decides what is too far. He decides that Truman's desire to leave is less important than the continued life of the show. For a US audience, Christoph can be read through entertainment power, but also through platform power more broadly. Not because any one company is literally Christoph, but because the film understands a kind of control that does not need to feel like direct violence every moment. It can feel like personalization. It can feel like protection. It can feel like giving people what they already want. It can feel like designing an environment so thoroughly that the person inside starts mistaking the design for reality. Christoph's favorite defense is that the outside world is not better. He is not entirely wrong in the most basic sense. The real world is messy. It is unsafe. It contains disappointment, cruelty, uncertainty, and pain. But that argument is also his deepest manipulation. He uses the imperfections of reality to justify stealing Truman's choice. That is the moral line the film keeps returning to. Safety without consent is not love. Comfort without freedom is not care. A perfect world that someone cannot leave is still a cage. Christoph's relationship to Truman also reveals the corporate logic underneath the emotional language. The show depends on Truman being alive but not free. Curious, but not too curious. Lovable, but not self-directed. Human enough to attract viewers, but controlled enough to remain a product. His humanity is the selling point, and also the thing the production must constantly suppress. The water trauma is one of the darkest examples. Truman's fear is not simply a personal phobia. It is part of the infrastructure of the show. His pain has been designed into the map. A childhood wound becomes a boundary system. The production does not need to physically chain him to Sea Haven every day, because it has taught his body to fear the road out. The idea is deeply unsettling because it shows how control can become internal. Truman carries the wall inside himself long before he reaches the wall of the dome. Modern viewers can connect that to many softer forms of limitation. Fear of instability, fear of losing status, fear of leaving a brand, fear of disappointing family, fear of stepping outside an algorithmically comfortable world, fear that the unknown is worse than the controlled routine. The movie should not flatten all of those into the same thing, but it gives us a useful image. Sometimes the strongest barrier is the one someone taught you to call common sense. Christoph's final storm exposes the lie in his claim of love. When Truman finally chooses to leave, Christoph is willing to risk killing him rather than let him go. That is when protection reveals itself as ownership. He does not want Truman safe as a free person. He wants Truman safe inside the story Christoph owns. That is why the film's critique of corporate entertainment still feels current. A system can use soft language while defending hard control. It can call itself family, community, personalization, safety, or care. But the test is simple. Can the person leave? Can they know the truth? Can they refuse the role? For Truman, the answer has always been no. And once we understand that, Christoph's calm voice becomes more terrifying than any villain shouting. He's not angry because Truman is suffering. He is angry because Truman is becoming the author of his own life. Truman's escape works so well because the movie does not pretend that the outside world is simple. That would make the ending too easy. If Sea Haven were only fake and the outside were only perfect, Truman's choice would be obvious in a less interesting way. But the final conversation with Christoph is powerful because Christoph offers an argument that sounds almost reasonable. Outside, there is no more truth than in the world he created. Outside, people lie too. Outside, people hurt each other too. Outside, Truman will not be protected by the script. And Truman still leaves. That is the emotional heart of the ending. He is not choosing a guaranteed happy life. He is choosing a life that can finally belong to him. The path to that choice is built through suspicion. First, small details break. A studio light falls from the sky. The radio seems to follow him. People move with strange coordination. His attempts to travel are blocked too perfectly. The world keeps adjusting itself around him, and the more it adjusts, the more visible the machinery becomes. That is one of the best things about the film. Truman does not suddenly wake up because someone gives him a lecture. He starts noticing seams. He pays attention to the places where reality feels overproduced. He becomes curious about the friction. For his audience, that matters because so much modern control is smooth. Feeds are smooth. Recommendations are smooth. Branded identities are smooth. Ads are smoothly embedded into entertainment. Performance becomes smoother the more practiced it gets. The Truman Show reminds us that freedom sometimes begins with noticing the one thing that does not quite fit. Then comes the ocean. The ocean is brilliant because it means two opposite things at once. It is the route out, and it is the fear designed to keep him in. It is freedom and trauma. It is possibility and terror. Truman has to cross not only a physical distance, but the emotional boundary the show built inside him. The storm makes that choice almost mythic. Christof throws the full force of his artificial world at Truman. Wind, rain, waves, darkness. The set becomes hostile because the set is losing control. And still, Truman holds on. There's something deeply American in the appeal of that scene. The individual refusing the system, the small boat against a manufactured sky. The person choosing freedom over safety. But the film complicates that ideal just enough. Truman's freedom is not triumphant because he has everything figured out. It is triumphant because he's willing to enter uncertainty. That is why the wall of the dome is such a haunting image. Truman's boat does not reach another country, another city, or another person. It hits the edge of the world. The horizon is fake. The sky is a surface. The whole environment finally admits what it is. And then there is the door. The door in the sky may be one of the most memorable images in American film, because it turns an abstract idea into something simple. The limit of Truman's reality becomes a staircase and an exit. He does not need to destroy the whole system. He does not need to defeat every person who lied to him. He just needs to walk through the opening the system never wanted him to find. Christof makes one last attempt to hold him with intimacy. He uses Truman's name. He tells him he has watched him his whole life. He offers the comfort of being known. But that is exactly the problem. Christof knows Truman in the most invasive way possible, and still does not respect him enough to let him choose. So Truman bows. That bow is strange and beautiful because it belongs to both worlds. It is the gesture of the performer they made him into, but it is also the first performance he controls. He uses the line everyone knows, but now it is no longer just a catchphrase. It becomes a goodbye, a final act of grace, a refusal to let Christof write the ending. The movie does not show us what happens next, and that is the right choice. Because the point is not that reality will be easy. The point is that an imperfect real life is still different from a perfect life built without consent. Truman walks through the door without certainty. That is what makes it freedom. What stays with me about the Truman Show is not only that Truman leaves. It is that everyone else has to decide what to do after he is gone. For Truman, the exit is the beginning of a real life. For the audience, it is the end of programming. That difference is one of the coldest ideas in the film. The viewers cheer because they feel the beauty of his escape. They understand for a moment that he deserved freedom. And then the screen goes dark, and some of them immediately look for something else to watch. The movie ends with freedom, but also with replacement. That detail feels even sharper now. In modern media life, attention moves quickly. A person's pain can become a trend. A confession can become a clip. A private moment can become a debate. A real life can become a storyline, and then the feed moves on. The Truman Show understood this before the feed became the center of so much daily attention. For a US audience, that is why the film should not be reduced to one simple message like social media is bad, or reality TV is fake, or privacy is gone. The movie is more useful than that. It asks how easily ordinary life can be shaped into something watchable. It asks how comfort can hide control. It asks how love can become ownership when consent disappears. It asks how advertising can enter the home, how audiences can confuse access with care, and how a person can be praised for being authentic while never being allowed to choose the terms of that authenticity. Truman's world feels familiar because modern life often rewards visibility. Being seen can bring connection. It can bring work. It can bring community, creativity, opportunity, and voice. The movie does not require us to reject all of that, but it does ask what gets lost when being seen becomes the default. Privacy is not only about hiding secrets. Sometimes privacy is the space where a person can be unfinished without an audience. It is the right to have a bad day that does not become content. The right to change without being branded as inconsistent. The right to love someone without turning the moment into a performance. The right to exist before the camera arrives. That is what Truman never had. He had fame without knowledge, intimacy without honesty, safety without freedom, community without consent. A life that looked complete from the outside but had been authored by someone else from the start. And that may be why the final door still feels so powerful. It is not just a door out of a television set. It is a door out of a role. Out of a version of himself that the world loved because it was easy to watch. Out of a story that gave him comfort in exchange for obedience. There's a hopeful thought in that. Even after a lifetime of manipulation, Truman notices the seams. He follows the wrong feeling. He tests the limits. He survives the storm. He reaches the edge. He hears the voice that claims to know him completely, and he still chooses the unknown. That is not a neat answer to modern life. Most of us cannot simply walk through a sky door and leave every platform, every performance, every pressure, every system of attention behind. The movie is not that literal, but it does leave a quieter question. How much of ourselves do we give away because being watched feels normal? And maybe the reason The Truman Show still works is that it does not answer that question for us. It gives us Truman at the threshold, smiling one last time, turning a catchphrase into a choice. Then it lets him disappear into a world that might be harder, messier, less flattering, and less safe. But at least finally, it is not a world written entirely for the camera.